The restaurant was packed, alive with the smell of grilled meat and the chatter of city people who came to show off more than to eat. It was the kind of place where money spoke louder than manners, and the waiters had learned to treat customers based on the shine of their shoes or the brand on their watch. Among them was Dylan, a tall, confident young man who thought he was the best on the floor. He knew every regular, every big tipper, and exactly which customers weren't worth his time. Dylan had a sharp tongue and a habit of judging people fast. If someone came in wearing old clothes or looked nervous, he rolled his eyes and gave them the cheapest service possible. But when a business executive in a suit entered, Dylan transformed, smiling wide, speaking politely, and hoping for a heavy tip. It was a dangerous arrogance, but he called it street smarts. That Friday afternoon was busy as always. The lunch rush had just started when the door opened and a large man walked in quietly. He wore a dark hoodie, simple sneakers, and carried no visible sign of wealth. He didn't look around nervously or try to impress anyone. He just walked calmly to an empty table near the window and sat down. Dylan noticed him immediately and smirked. "Another one of those," he muttered to another waiter. "Probably here to sit for an hour and order water." He walked over with a half-hearted smile. "Hey, you planning to eat or just taking a break?" His tone was sharp, his posture lazy. The man looked up, eyes calm and kind. "I'd like a menu, please," he said softly. Dylan tossed one on the table. "Sure, but just letting you know, we've got a service charge if you're not ordering a full meal." The man nodded, saying nothing. He looked through the menu quietly, not reacting to Dylan's tone at all. A few minutes later, Dylan returned. "So what will it be?" he asked, impatience already dripping from his voice. The man smiled slightly. "I'll take the steak, medium rare, and a glass of water." Dylan frowned. "Just water? No wine, no soda?" "No, thank you," the man replied. "Right," Dylan said, rolling his eyes as he walked away. He muttered under his breath. "Cheap and boring?" The kitchen staff overheard. Maria, one of the older cooks, frowned. "Dylan, you gotta stop judging people," she said. "You never know who's who," he laughed. "Come on, Maria, look at the guy. Hoodies don't pay tips." The steak came out perfect, but Dylan dropped it on the table without a word, like he was serving fast food. The man looked up again and said, "Thank you." Dylan just nodded, already turning away. Half an hour passed. The man finished eating, and Dylan went to collect the plate. "Was it okay?" he asked flatly. The man smiled. "It was excellent. Compliments to the chef," Dylan shrugged. "Sure," he said, grabbing the empty plate and walking off. When he returned with the bill, the man paid in cash, no card, no questions. He left a tip, small but fair, then stood up, adjusted his hoodie, and gave Dylan a calm look. "You work hard," he said quietly. "You should try working kind, too." Dylan frowned, not understanding. "Yeah, whatever," he said and turned away. When the man left, Dylan snorted. "He's giving me advice now. Unreal." But as the man stepped outside, something about him caught the attention of the manager, Mr. Lewis. He was standing near the door, greeting customers, and his eyes widened slightly. He rushed over to Dylan. "That man you just served, what did he say? How did he act?" Dylan looked confused. "What do you mean? Just some random guy. Why?" Mr. Lewis stared toward the street where the man had disappeared. I think that's Mr. Thompson." "Who?" "Shakir Thompson," the manager said softly. "The silent investor. The owner." Dylan's smile faded. "You're joking?" But Mr. Lewis didn't laugh. "He sometimes visits his restaurants without notice. He likes to see how staff treat people when they don't know who he is." For the first time that day, Dylan's chest went cold. His face flushed as he remembered every rude word, every lazy gesture. "You can't be serious," he whispered. I thought he was just some regular guy." Mr. Lewis shook his head. "He's far from regular. If he noticed your attitude—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Dylan tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out weak. The room suddenly felt smaller, quieter. Even the air seemed heavier. That night, Dylan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment when the man had looked him in the eyes and said, "You should try working kind, too." Now it made sense. It wasn't advice from a stranger. It was a warning from his boss. The next day, Dylan came to work earlier than usual. He hoped it was all just a mistake. But as soon as he walked in, he saw the manager waiting with a tight smile. "He's coming back today," Mr. Lewis said. "The owner, Mr. Thompson, so be on your best behavior." Dylan's stomach twisted. He adjusted his uniform, wiped his hands nervously, and whispered, "I'll do better today. I have to." Morning light filtered through the restaurant's windows, soft and golden, but for Dylan, everything looked gray. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the cutlery on each table. Every glass gleamed perfectly, every napkin folded like art. He'd never cared this much before, but today was different. Today, the mysterious man he had insulted was coming back, and he wasn't just a customer. He was the owner. The restaurant buzzed with nervous energy. Word had spread among the staff like wildfire. Everyone whispered about the surprise visit from the secret investor who owned the place. Some thought it was just a rumor. Others had seen the man the previous day and recognized him. Dylan's stomach turned every time he caught someone glancing his way. He had been arrogant for so long that humility felt heavy, like an unfamiliar weight pressing on his chest. Every few minutes he glanced at the door, half hoping the man wouldn't come, half wanting the chance to apologize. When the clock struck noon, the door opened. The same tall man stepped in wearing a simple black jacket and the same calm expression. His presence alone changed the air in the room. Quiet, steady, powerful. He didn't look angry. If anything, he looked curious. Mr. Lewis, the manager, rushed forward with an almost nervous smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Thompson. We're honored to have you again. Shakir, Big Shaq." Thompson nodded politely. "Thank you. I wanted to see how things are running." Dylan froze behind the counter. He wanted to hide but couldn't move. Shakir's eyes scanned the room once, landing on him for a second. That calm look again, not angry, not vengeful, just unreadable. It made Dylan's throat dry. Mr. Lewis started introducing him to the staff one by one. Everyone smiled too wide, stood too straight, spoke too carefully. Dylan wished he could vanish before it was his turn. But when Shakir turned toward him, there was nowhere left to run. "This is Dylan," the manager said. "He's been with us for almost 2 years now." Shakir smiled faintly. "Yes, I remember." The words hit harder than any shout. Dylan felt his face heat up. "Sir, Shakir raised a hand gently. "Let's not start there. I'd rather see how you work." It wasn't a threat, but it felt like one. Dylan nodded silently, his chest tight. As the owner walked through the restaurant, checking tables, talking to chefs, and observing service, Dylan worked harder than he ever had in his life. He greeted every guest with genuine respect, even those who looked like they couldn't afford much. He smiled at children, thanked customers sincerely, and helped other waiters without being asked. But the weight of guilt didn't lift. Every time he caught Shakir watching from across the room, his heart thumped louder. When the lunch rush calmed, Shakir sat down at the same table near the window, the very one where he'd been insulted. He waved to Dylan. "I'd like to order again," he said, his tone light. Dylan walked over, his palms sweating. "Of course, sir. What would you like today?" Shakir looked at the menu for a moment, then smiled. "Same steak, medium rare, and a glass of water." Dylan nodded. "Right away." As he handed the order to the kitchen, Maria gave him a small, knowing smile. "Second chance," she whispered. He nodded quietly. When the food was ready, Dylan carried the plate carefully, his hands steady now. He placed it gently in front of Shakir. "I hope it's perfect this time, sir." Shakir looked up at him. "Thank you, Dylan. Tell me, what did you think of me yesterday?" The question cut deep. Dylan's mouth went dry. "Sir, I thought you were just another customer, someone who didn't belong here. I judged you without even thinking." Shakir nodded slowly. "And why did you think that?" "I guess." Dylan looked down, his voice low. "I thought people's clothes told their story. I thought if someone looked rich, they were important. I was wrong." Shakir didn't respond immediately. He cut a piece of steak, tasted it, and smiled slightly. "Still perfect," he said. Then his tone softened. "You know, Dylan, I've eaten in hundreds of restaurants. Some serve gold on their plates but treat people like dirt. Others serve simple food with kindness that feels priceless. Do you know which one succeeds? Dylan shook his head. The second one, Shakir said quietly, because respect is the best seasoning. Without it, even the best meal tastes bitter. Dylan stood there, unsure if he should speak or just listen. The man's words were gentle but heavy, carrying lessons that no lecture could teach. When Shakir finished his meal, he placed his fork down and looked up. "You're a good worker, Dylan. I saw that today. But you let pride blind you yesterday. You saw what you expected, not what was real. That's how good people ruin their own chances." Dylan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir. Truly. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I've been trying to survive in this job, and sometimes I forget what matters." Shakir studied him for a long moment. "I don't want you to survive here. I want you to grow. Everyone here represents the name of this place, and my name too. If I can treat people with respect, you can too. That's all I ask." Dylan nodded quickly, his eyes wet. "I understand, sir. I promise it won't happen again." Shakir stood up and extended his hand. "Good, then start fresh." Dylan hesitated, then shook his hand firmly. It was warm, solid, and strangely forgiving. The rest of the staff watched the scene quietly. No one expected the owner to be so calm, so patient. Dylan had prepared himself for humiliation, maybe even losing his job. Instead, he had been given a second chance, something rare and humbling. When Shakir left that afternoon, the restaurant felt different. People were quieter, more thoughtful. Even the clinking of dishes seemed softer. Dylan cleaned tables with care, his mind still spinning. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like just a waiter. He felt like someone who could change, someone who had been seen not for his mistakes, but for his potential. Later that night, when he walked home through the city lights, he replayed Shakir's words in his mind. "Respect is the best seasoning," he smiled to himself, a tired but honest smile. Maybe this was the start of something new. He didn't know it yet, but the next visit from the owner would test him even more, and this time it wouldn't just be about manners. It would be about who he truly was when no one was watching. The next morning began with the smell of rain and the sound of tires hissing along the wet street outside. Inside the restaurant, the air was heavy with the quiet after a storm. Every surface gleamed. The kitchen buzzed with low voices, and the waiters moved quickly, nervous but pretending not to be. Dylan came in early again. His shirt was ironed, his shoes polished, his hair neatly tied back. For the first time since he'd started the job, he didn't care about tips or fancy customers. He only wanted to do things right. Every time he remembered Shakir's calm eyes and steady voice, a strange mix of shame and hope filled his chest. By noon, the restaurant filled with its usual crowd, office workers on lunch breaks, couples sharing quiet meals, a few older guests who liked to chat with the staff. Dylan worked smoothly, his smile honest this time. When an elderly woman dropped her spoon, he bent down immediately, helping her and replacing the cutlery without a second thought. When a young man complained about a late order, Dylan didn't roll his eyes or snap back. He apologized, checked with the kitchen, and made sure the food came out hot and perfect. But something felt different about today. The manager had been on edge since morning, checking his phone constantly, pacing between tables, and straightening things that were already straight. When Dylan asked if everything was okay, Mr. Lewis just said, "Big day. Just focus on doing your best." Around 2 in the afternoon, the door opened, and silence rolled through the restaurant like a wave. Shakir Thompson walked in again, this time not alone. Behind him came 2 men in suits and a woman carrying a clipboard. They looked official, serious. The staff froze, eyes darting between the group and the manager. Mr. Lewis hurried forward, forcing a nervous smile. "Mr. Thompson." "Welcome back, sir." Shakir nodded calmly. "Good afternoon, everyone. I hope the day's been smooth." Every employee suddenly stood straighter. Dylan's heart pounded so loud he could hear it. The memory of his arrogance from that first day still stung. Shakir looked around slowly. "As you know," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I own several restaurants in this city. I rarely announce when I'll visit. I like to see the truth, the real service, the real effort." The woman with the clipboard began taking notes as he spoke. "This isn't just an inspection," Shakir continued. "It's an opportunity. Those who show pride and respect in their work will grow. Those who don't—" He paused, glancing briefly at Dylan. "They learn." No one breathed for a moment. He smiled suddenly, breaking the tension. "Now please, carry on as normal. Pretend I'm not here." That was easier said than done. Every waiter moved like they were walking on glass, trying not to make mistakes. Dylan focused on serving a family near the window, speaking politely, refilling glasses, making sure each plate looked perfect. He refused to even look at Shakir's table, where the owner sat quietly with his team, observing. Minutes stretched into hours. Slowly, the tension eased. The kitchen ran smoothly, orders came out on time, and even the guests seemed to sense something special about the atmosphere. Dylan could feel pride returning, not the arrogant kind he once had, but something cleaner. He wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. He just wanted to make people feel welcome. Late in the afternoon, Shakir stood and clapped his hands once. "Everyone, could I have your attention, please?" The entire restaurant went still. Customers looked up from their meals, confused but curious. Shakir smiled at them. "Good afternoon, everyone. I hope your food and service have been wonderful today. I wanted to thank you for dining here and to share something with you." Dylan's stomach tightened. Shakir turned to the crowd of employees. "Most of you didn't know me before this week. That was intentional. I've owned this place for 2 years, but I prefer to see how it truly runs without anyone changing their behavior." He paused, letting the words settle. "When I came in the first time, I wasn't looking for a perfect meal. I was looking for genuine respect." A murmur spread among the staff. Shakir's eyes moved gently toward Dylan. "The first time I visited, not everyone passed that test." Dylan lowered his head, shame burning through him. The entire restaurant felt like it was holding its breath. Shakir didn't raise his voice. "I met one waiter who judged me the moment he saw me. He looked at my hoodie and sneakers and decided I wasn't worth his effort. He treated me like I didn't belong here. But the next day, that same waiter worked harder than anyone else in this room. He served every customer with kindness, not because he was afraid of me, but because he wanted to be better." Dylan looked up slowly. Shakir continued, "And that, to me, is what matters most. Mistakes can be forgiven when they're followed by change." The staff exchanged glances. The customers listened in silence. Shakir turned fully toward Dylan. "Would you step forward, please?" Dylan's legs felt like stone, but he walked up, heart thudding in his ears. He stood beside the owner, hands trembling slightly. Shakir looked at him calmly. "Dylan, do you remember what you told me the first time we met?" Dylan swallowed. "I said that there was a service charge if you weren't ordering a full meal." A few quiet laughs rippled through the crowd. Shakir smiled faintly. "Yes, and now I'd like to add something. True service carries no charge. It comes from the heart." The customers clapped softly. Then Shakir placed a hand on Dylan's shoulder. This young man could have lost his job, but he chose to learn instead. That's why he's not being punished. In fact, I'd like him to take on new training, to help lead others by example. The applause grew louder. Dylan's throat tightened. He could barely speak. "Sir, thank you. I don't deserve this." Shakir shook his head. "You earned it the moment you stopped pretending and started caring." For a long moment, the two men stood there, one who had power and one who had learned the true meaning of respect. Then Shakir turned back to the guests. "This restaurant doesn't belong to me alone," he said. "It belongs to every person who works here, every hand that serves with honesty. That's what makes a business great." The crowd erupted in applause again. Customers smiled at Dylan as he stepped back, overwhelmed. Even Mr. Lewis looked proud, clapping the loudest. When the event ended and the inspectors left, Shakir lingered a little longer. He found Dylan near the counter, wiping his hands on a towel. "You handled today well," Shakir said. Dylan looked down, still emotional. "I just wanted to make it right, sir." "You did," Shakir said simply. "Keep that attitude. You'll go far. Not just here, but anywhere you work." For the first time in years, Dylan didn't feel small. He felt capable, like he'd been given a second chance not just at his job, but at life. As Shakir left, the other staff surrounded Dylan, patting his shoulder, joking and cheering. Even Maria hugged him. "See? I told you," she said softly. "You never know who's who. That's why you treat everyone like they matter," Dylan nodded, smiling through the sting in his eyes. That night, when the restaurant closed, he stayed behind for a few minutes, standing alone in the empty dining room. The lights reflected softly off the glasses, the chairs lined up neatly. He looked at the table by the window, the one that had changed everything, and whispered quietly, "Thank you." He didn't know if Shakir would ever hear it, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that the words were real. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped into the cool night air feeling lighter than he had in years. What he didn't know was that Shakir had plans for him, plans that would take him far beyond waiting tables. But that was still to come. The lesson, however, was already learned. Respect once lost can be rebuilt, not with pride, but with humility,